Sitting all day isn't just ruining your posture, it is actively making it harder to lose belly fat. And if you're stuck above 20% body fat, your desk might be doing more damage than your diet. So here is what sitting is actually doing to your hormones, your metabolism, and what to do about it. Many guys think that the workout session is the main event of your day calorie wise, but it's not. If you train for 1 hour and then you sit for the next 10, that 1 hour is doing far less than you think. And this is because of your NEAT, which stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is just a fancy way of saying all the calories you burn from moving throughout the day that is not deliberate exercise, kind of like me waving my hands right now, typing on the keyboard, standing up, sitting down, brushing the teeth, driving the car, whatever. Now, researchers at the Mayo Clinic found that obese individuals in this study were seated for 2.5 hours more compared to the lean subjects. And if the obese subjects were to adopt the same NEAT activities as the lean subjects, they might expend an additional 350 calories per day. Now, that is the difference between losing fat steadily and not losing anything at all. And it has nothing to do with what is actually happening in a short gym workout. Now, this is common for guys who are working 50 hours a week, running a business, managing a family, and all that. They've got gym sessions locked in, but then the other 10, 12 hours are spent in back-to-back meetings or in the car and at the desk. And if you feel it, the stiffness when you stand up or you try to bend down, but that gut is just not moving, despite the amount of hours that you're putting into the gym. So this is the key shift. If you're sitting for most of the day, you need to be deliberately building in more movement across your day, not just relying on the 1 hour or less that you've accounted for in some deliberate workout. And most guys don't work out every day. Some only 2 or 3 workouts a week. So instead, you can do simple stuff like standing up every 45 minutes, walking while you're on calls, taking the stairs. As soon as you finish eating, stand up and go for a 5 to 10 minute walk. And just that alone has also been very effective at reducing blood sugar spikes, which has been proven. So none of this is exciting stuff, but it's where a huge chunk of daily calorie burn actually comes from. However, sitting isn't just costing you calories. It's also working against the 2 biggest muscle groups in your body, and that is a problem for a different reason. Here's what's actually happening structurally every time you sit down for hours at a time every day. Your hip flexors spend most of the day in a shortened, compressed position. Over time, they adapt and just get tighter and tighter. And the hip flexors reduce the range of motion and the activation of the opposing muscles, which are predominantly your glutes. When one muscle is chronically shortened, the opposite muscle learns to kind of switch off. Now, a 2025 study published in the International Journal of the Sports Physical Therapy found that a sedentary lifestyle contributes to hip flexor tightness. Obviously, that's not really a surprise. And that those with restricted hip flexor length showed a decrease in glute activation during a squat. So what's that got to do with losing belly fat? Well, your glutes and your quads are the 2 largest muscle groups in your body. And if they're not firing properly when you squat, when you deadlift, and when you lunge or just move about in the day, then you're not loading them in the way that the exercise was designed. So you're going through the motions without getting the full stimulus of long-term. And over months and years, that's going to mean less muscle built in these areas that should be contributing to your total muscle mass. And this compounds with something that's already working against you, because from your mid-30s onwards, we start losing muscle mass around 1% per year if you're not actively countering and maintaining the muscle you have. If the biggest muscles in your body are being undertrained because your hips won't let them work properly, that loss is only going to accelerate. And this gets worse when guys with weak glutes and tight hips injure their lower back and they don't train legs at all, which is why guys in their 50s have a flat ass. So it's easy for the body fat to move in and fill the gap. Your metabolism is quietly adapting to reflect your body composition that you now have with less muscle mass, a high fat to low muscle ratio. It's a slow drift over years that most men don't notice until they're looking at a body that doesn't reflect how they perform in other areas of life. And if that sounds familiar, you're probably not too far off where the men I work with were before we fixed this. The link to find out more is in the description below this video. However, the fix during your day is not some full 30-minute mobility routine. It's actually pretty simple. The stretch that the research actually tested is a lunge and reach. So you want your back knee down, front foot flat, leaning forward, and then the same arm up and across. 30 to 60 seconds per side, that's enough to maintain the range of motion that your training is going to need over time to actually do its jobs in the legs region. But it's not just your muscles sitting that are working against you. What it's doing to your hormones is a separate problem entirely. I'm training and I'm eating well. Why is the belly still there? If you've had that thought, this is probably part of the answer. Back-to-back meetings, deadlines, emails, calls, people depending on you. Basically, a high demanding desk job keeps your cortisol chronically elevated. And here's a mechanism that most people never really hear about, or at least not often. Visceral fat has a significantly higher density of cortisol receptors than fat anywhere else in the body. That means when your cortisol is elevated, your belly pulls in more fatty acids and stores more fat and releases it more slowly. In this study with 1,809 people, they found that individuals with high chronic stress had 9.4 centimeters squared more visceral fat than those reporting with lower stressful lives. This is why two men can be in a similar deficit on paper doing the same training, yet one still has a belly. The fix isn't complicated, but it still needs to be deliberate and consistent, structured movement breaks throughout the day, not just one short session, to help you interrupt that cortisol chronic elevation. Basically using low intensity activity. So simply going for a walk, 5 to 10 minute meditation, getting outside, fresh air in the sun, just to calm the nervous system down and your mind. And the biggest domino is 7.5 to 8 hours in bed every night. That is where the magic happens, because you stop being the guy who can't figure out why the belly won't move, and you become the guy who understands his own biology and manages it every single day by recovering fully and feeling good and not burning yourself out. But cortisol isn't the only hormone that your desk is working against. This next one is where it gets serious for men over 35. Visceral fat contains an enzyme called aromatase, and this enzyme converts testosterone into estrogen. So the more visceral fat you're carrying, the more your testosterone is losing to that conversion process pretty much every day. Sitting accelerates this in two ways. First, it leads to visceral fat that houses the aromatase in the first place, which we already covered in the last point. And second, the sedentary behavior itself appears to directly suppress testosterone production independent of body fat, because in this study with 6,057 men, the researchers found that the risk of testosterone deficiency increased significantly once the sedentary time exceeded 4.5 hours per day. Now, for men already in their 40s, that gap is quite significant. You're fighting an age-related decline on top of a lifestyle that is already accelerating the decline with your muscular composition and your hormonal profiles. Lower testosterone means less muscle retention, slower fat metabolism, lower energy, and weaker sex drive, all of which makes the belly harder to shift and tougher to train off with just exercise and healthy salads on its own. This is a compounding problem that nobody's really connecting when they're just focused on healthy food and lifting some weight or going for a run. The sitting creates the visceral fat. The visceral fat runs the aromatase drains the testosterone, and the lower testosterone makes it harder to build the muscle that would have helped you burn more fat, specifically visceral fat. It's this loop that all starts at the desk. If you've been training and you've been eating reasonably well and you still can't shift this belly, that is not a discipline problem, that is a system problem. The men who fix this stop fighting their own body and they start managing it. More energy, clearer head, a physique that actually reflects the standards that you hold everywhere else in your life. But another 6 to 12 months of the same approach is just going to give you the same result you've already got. If you're done repeating that cycle, the link is in the description below. Tap there for details.